حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. We begin in the name of Allah, the Exalted, the Sublime, and ask Him to send His timeless, choicest, most abundant peace, blessings, and mercy on the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and his wives and his family members and his companions, those who follow their example till the day of judgment, praying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes us amongst them. Allahumma ameen. Welcome to the special edition of the Young Professionals Halaqa. Here every Thursday night we usually meet after Isha. Now it's after Tarawih, of course, to accommodate Ramadan. It's a pleasure to have all of you here, trying to gain some wisdoms from the Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, specifically in line with the theme that we've chosen for this Ramadan, which is what? Remind me. Yes, Yasin? He raised his hand. I have to... The greatest comeback to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that applies to everyone. That's the first stop that we want to take. The greatest comeback, coming back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we're going to continue to reiterate over and over throughout the month in our programming, doesn't mean that only for people who are far away from Allah, people who are committing sins. Not only are we all at times further from Allah than we should be, but we tend to think about, when we say the comeback to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we think about others and their journey. But this is for everybody. Everybody needs to come close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everyone has things that they want to rebound from and to let go and to change in Ramadan, and this is what it's all about. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us to finish day number 6, night number 7 of Ramadan. And if you think about it, that's 25% done. We are 25% done with Ramadan. Who feels like it was fast? Yeah, that's how it works. It only gets worse as you get older. And my message to all of you guys here, who are generally young, you're all young, you're all youth, right? Is that right now, with the configuration that you have in your life, as it is right now, all of you, this is the freest you will be. This is as much devotion as you can give. It gets less and less. Not because you become less pious. Hopefully that doesn't happen, inshallah. May Allah protect all of you. But because you get busier. You get married, you have children, you have responsibilities, you have a career, you have school, you have work. That doesn't get less, it gets more. The spin cycle of this dunya, this worldly life, only increases in speed. So if you don't give it your all now, if you don't try to lock in now, it's very tough to do later. This Ramadan, as it's going so far, next year you'll likely have less time to do stuff. So think about that and take it to heart. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself emphasizes this lesson when He talks to us about Ramadan. He says, أَيَّامًا مَعْدُودَات. It's a number of days, guys. Allah's telling us it's a sweepstakes. It's going to run out soon. It has a deadline. Lock in. Don't worry about how tired you are. Don't worry about your responsibilities. Don't worry about... Lock in. This is a limited opportunity. And you do not have any guarantee whatsoever that it will repeat. So, for those who are doing well, push harder. Get ready to max out in 2 weeks as the last 10 nights come in. If you're not doing well, then don't throw in the towel. Don't concede that this is how the rest of Ramadan will look. Fix now. Take it back now. This is your special opportunity. And for both groups, those who are doing well, those who aren't doing well, and those who are in between, there's a special hadith in store for you tonight. The Prophet ﷺ has a very special encouragement for you. And it's the hadith number 37 in the collection of An-Nawawi. عن ابن عباس رضي الله عنهما عن الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم فيما يرويه عن ربه تبارك وتعالى. That Ibn Abbas says that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned this hadith to us, and it's a hadith Qudsi. So the wording is not directly given in this hadith. It's a summary by Ibn Abbas. But he says the Prophet ﷺ told us these are the words of Allah. What did Allah say? He says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَتَبَ الْحَسَنَاتِ وَالسَّيِّئَاتِ ثُمَّ بَيَّنَ ذَلِكَ فمن هم بحسنة فلم يعملها كتبها الله له عنده حسنة كاملة فإن هو هم بها فعملها كتبها الله له عنده 10 حسنات إلى 700 ضعف إلى أضعاف كثيرة وإن هم بسيئة فلم يعملها كتبها الله له عنده حسنة كاملة فإن هم بها فعملها كتبها الله سيئة واحدة. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us through His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala recorded the good deeds and records the evil ones. And He clarifies the way that works. So whoever intends to do a righteous action but does not do it, Allah records it as 1 hasana. And whoever intends a righteous action then actually accomplishes it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala writes it as 10 hasanat up to 700, up to way more. And then whoever intends an evil deed, but doesn't do it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala writes that as a hasana. And whoever intends an evil deed and then does it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala writes that as one sin. Let's break this down and go through these hadith. Like I said, this is vital information that you need, whether you're doing good or doing bad in Ramadan. If it's up to par or not, this hadith is for you. There's so many times, this is the main point of the hadith, there's so many times in this life that when you try to be more religious, when you try to do a little bit more, when you try to push yourself further, you feel like the deck is stacked against you. Anyone ever feel like that? Or when you're trying to change yourself for the better, you feel like the environment is not conducive to it. Life in general is not conducive to it. The opportunities that you're presented make it harder. The people around you make it harder. The society, the culture, the images that you see on your screen, they all make it harder. You feel like everything is stacked against me. I gotta go against the grain every single day, every single decision. How I speak, how I dress, how I act, how I walk, how I engage with others. It has to be the opposite, and that's difficult, isn't it? Which is why the Prophet ﷺ told us, يَأْتِي عَلَى النَّاسِ زَمَانٍ, there will come upon the people a time, الْقَابِضُ عَلَى دِينِهِ كَالْقَابِضُ عَلى الْجَمْرِ, that the one who is holding on to their religious commitment is like the one who's holding on to a burning hot coal. It's going to feel impossible. It's going to feel extremely difficult. And these are things that every single one of us will continue to go through, not just in this society, but worldwide. This is the norm. This is why he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in another hadith, بدأ الإسلام غريبا وسيعود غريبا كما بدأ. Islam started off as something strange, and it will return to being something strange just as it started. Things will come full circle. فَتُوبَى لِلْغُرَبَاءِ, glad tidings in store for the strangers. If you feel weird, he's telling you it's okay. I have glad tidings for you. There's good things in store for you. Everything that you missed out on, there's something better in store. But with that being said, with that feeling being something that a lot of us experience, and if you don't experience it, you definitely will. It's just part of the test of life. This hadith gives us some encouragement. That while it does seem like the deck is stacked against you, Allah does also stack the deck for you. He places power-ups. You know, in the video games, you're like in a really hard level, and then like you get something, and all of a sudden, all the difficulty just drops, and it usually lasts like 30 seconds or something. It's very difficult. The difficulty, it's very special. I mean, it's something that changes how you feel. It changes how you approach obstacles, because you have a special superpower. Right? This is something that we all experience in entertainment. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us there's the same concept in life through this hadith. Number one, the first stop, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet ﷺ said, he recorded the evil deeds and he recorded the good ones. That is the first stop, is to realize that Allah records it all. He's Al-Raqib, the observer. He's Al-Hasib, the one who will take into account. He's As-Sami' Al-Alim, Al-Basir. He sees all, he knows all, he observes all, he hears all. That is a concept that we need to bring much closer in Ramadan and outside of it. That's actually a big part of Ramadan. Because in Ramadan, who can tell you're fasting? Whoever comes close to you and smells your breath, right? No, but for real, who can tell you're fasting? How can I tell you're fasting? It's between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You could do that thing that when you're a kid, you know, when you like say, let me just look into the fridge, see what's there, and like you hide it and take a bite. Anyone else do that? No, just me? All right. Shouldn't have done that. All right, I never did that. It was a hypothetical. But you, as a kid, some kids did that. Where they'd go to the fridge and they say, I'm just looking inside. And they say, no, I'm still fasting, right? And no one can tell, because it's between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That idea of realizing that my relationship and my deeds, the main audience is Allah. The only audience that I care about is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's a big part of the fasting. And that's what the Prophet ﷺ is saying here. It's all recorded. Get that into your mind and realize it. وَكُلُّ صَغِيرٍ وَكَبِيرٍ مُسْتَطَرٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says every little thing and every huge thing is in a line somewhere. It's recorded. It's not unknown. Allah is not figuring out like you. He's observing and He's recording it. And it is something that is recorded to the most minute detail. وَمَا تَكُونُوا فِي شَأْنٍ وَمَا تَتْلُوا مِنْهُ مِنْ قُرْآنٍ وَلَا تَعْمَلُونَ مِنْ عَمَلٍ إِلَّا كُنَّا عَلَيْكُمْ شُهُودًا إِذْ تُفِيضُونَ فِيهِ وما يعزب عن ربك من مثقال ذرة في الأرض ولا في السماء ولا أصغر من ذلك ولا أكبر إلا في كتاب مبين. There is no activity that you may be engaged in, or any portion of the Quran that you may be reciting, nor any deed that you do at all, except that we are a witness over while you are doing it. Not in single ant's weight is hidden from your Lord in the heavens or in the earth, nor anything smaller than that or larger, but it's written in a complete, clear record. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, think of the biggest thing, think of the good deeds, think of the bad deeds, we have it all. And you will face it on the day of judgment. وَأَسِرُّوا قَوْلَكُمْ وَاجْهَرُوا بِهِ إِنَّهُ عَلِيمٌ بِذَاتِ الصُّدُورِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, hide what you want or bring it out into the open, it's up to you. He knows what's in your chest, the inner workings of your emotions. That's all equally apparent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. سَوَاءٌ مِّنكُم مَّنْ أَسَرَّ الْقَوْلَ وَمَنْ جَهَرَ بِهِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, equal amongst you, meaning to Allah, are the ones who proclaim evil out loud or hide it in the middle of the night. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't need to focus on one of them a little more. He doesn't need to punch in some settings to see what this person is doing or hear what they're saying. They're all equal in the sight of Allah in His knowledge. They're all equally observed and equally known about. This is why the Prophet ﷺ defined ihsan, which is perfection of faith, beautification of faith, the highest level you can have of faith. How did he define it, sallallahu alaihi wasallam? We spoke about it before. That you worship Allah and ta'bud Allah كَأَنَّكَ تَرَاهُ, as if you can see Him. But because I can't see Him, what's that thought that's supposed to get me to lock in down? Lock in, because I can lock in, because then he said sallallahu alaihi wasallam after that, and if you don't see Him, which you don't, فَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ تَرَاهُ فَإِنَّهُ يَرَاكَ. You're hyper aware of the fact that He sees you. So that's the first part. As many of the righteous would say, don't let the attention of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the gaze of Allah, be the most insignificant in your life. That if there's someone else gazing upon you, or someone else who was aware of what you're saying or what you're doing, you would think twice. But Allah, the constant, most detailed observer, doesn't get a second thought. Don't be like that. They said, one of the scholars was asked, how can I lower my gaze? Someone came to him and said, how can I lower my gaze? There's stuff to look at everywhere and I find it very difficult. Summer comes in, it's around the corner, and it's like, now it's like all over, billboards. How do I lower my gaze? How can I overcome when it's everywhere? And the scholar said simply, know that the gaze of Allah on you is more minute than your gaze to whatever is haram. Something passes by haram quickly, you could do this. You could do a quick glance and no one will be the wiser. You got to know that Allah's gaze is more detailed, is more focused, is more clear. Don't make Him the least significant observer in your life, the least significant audience member. That we spend lifetimes trying to impress people, carefully cherry-picking our words, cherry-picking our clothes. We never leave the house without doing one of these, right? Just me again? We're hyper-focused on everybody else. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is irrelevant. That shouldn't be the case. He's emphasizing the beginning of in this hadith, He records everything. مَا يَلْفِظُ مِنْ قَوْلٍ إِلَّا لَدَيْهِ رَقِيبٌ عَتِيدٌ. You don't utter a single phrase except there's a recorder standing by your side with a pen in hand waiting to record it. And it will be for you or against you. There's nothing in between. So be constantly aware of the fact everything is being recorded. I will receive that record on the Day of Judgment. اقرأ كتابك كفى بنفسك اليوم عليك حسيبا. Read your book. You are sufficient of a witness against yourself today. It's your book. You're the author. You spent a lifetime writing it. On this day, you simply read it. So the first stop is to be hyper aware of this record of deeds. It should be constantly on your mind. Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu would say, حَاسِبُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ قَبْلَ أَن تُحَاسَبُوا. Take yourself into account before you're taken into account. So the knowledge that Allah has a record of my good and bad, I know that exists and I'm going to meet it on the Day of Judgment. Let me do myself a favor. And every day before I go to sleep, I make a T-chart of good and bad deeds and look at it. What did I say today that I expect to be rewarded for on the Day of Judgment? And what did I say that I expect I'll have to make up for it? Because maybe I could undo it now. Maybe I could fix it now. So take yourselves into account. That is a big emphasis of the hadith. Then he said, ثُمَّ بَيَّنَ ذَلِكَ. And he made it clear how. The record of deeds, how exactly does it work? Allah made it clear. And that's something beautiful. Nothing's a mystery. You're not left to figure it out. You're not left to see how it's all going to turn out and who knows what it all looks like. And we've said this many times before, the process of death and afterwards, people fear it because to them it's such a mystery. But in Islam, we know and have more conviction about those phases of existence more than we have of this current phase. What's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to happen 5 years from now? What is your trajectory in life? Who are you going to marry? How many children are you going to have? Where are you going to end up living? All that is, you try your best and hope for the best, but you'll only figure it out when it happens. While the hereafter, well, how are you going to die? What happens in your grave? How are you going to be resurrected? There's a blueprint. There's one of two options. There's several scenarios. None of them will be foreign to you. You simply choose and lock in now. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it clear how exactly this works. And He drew the exact blueprint so you're never functioning based on shooting into the dark, shooting from the hip. You know exactly what you're getting into and what you're investing in. How did He make the system of record of deeds? This is exactly what this hadith is about. Clarifying that the record of deeds, the way that it works, is in your favor. Allah tweaked it so it can be easier for you to be a good Muslim, easier for you to make this decision. First of all, He said, whoever intends a good deed, man hamma bi hasanatin, Allah will write it as a hasana kamila, full. You intend a hasana, Allah will record it as a hasana. But you didn't do it. You intended it. It was a thought in your mind. So why should I do anything? Why don't I just kick it at home and just think about hasanats all day? I can think a lot faster than I can do. Yeah, Ahmed. How do you know? Why are you throwing the shade at me? How do you know I'm not sincere? Well, I didn't say I'm not going to do it. I'm planning hasanats all day long. So, but it's faster to think of them. You seen? It is a good point. That's why I said it. I'm the man. Thank you. You think it's dishonest. So similar to Ahmed, that just by thinking about it and never doing it is dishonest. Okay?
If you thought about it and then you tried it and it's not happened, then you're honest with yourself, you tried it, you actually tried it.
Okay. Mariam? So that's just going to the next part of the hadith where you do it, it gets you get 10 hasanat up to 700 up to more. So I'm not denying that. I'm just saying what will stop someone from saying, let me just think about hasanat all day long and I'm cashing on easy hasanat. Like what's wrong with that? Yeah, brother. That's pretty funny, but I don't think so. Wouldn't it be absolutely horrendous and terrifying if Allah dealt with us the way that we deal with Him? That'd be the absolute worst. And this hadith is actually about the fact that He's going to deal with us so much better than we deal with Him. That's the hack. That's the power up. That's the blessing. But that would be absolutely horrible if Allah dealt with us exactly the way that we dealt with Him. But alhamdulillah, that is not the case. So you guys are generally on the right track. I just like playing devil's advocate. Shaitan's locked up, so no, I'm just kidding. But the hadith clarifies, other hadith clarify. First of all, the Prophet didn't say man khatara bi hasana, whoever just thinks about it. He says man hamma. Hamma is a different word than just thinking. It indicates a little bit of determination. It indicates a little bit of planning, even though it is not the action itself. So the person doesn't just think about a random good deed. Like, wouldn't it be awesome if I had $1 million and gave $1 million in sadaqah? No, not that simple. It's actually paired with a determination, some kind of intention in the heart that I would like to do this. I actually would love to enact this. And maybe they'll think about the how. And the scholars, they've said, and we'll get to that eventually, that the extent of the reward here is in accordance, it's relevant, it's correlated to the extent of the thinking. So they said maybe a passing thought that if I had a bonus this month, I would give more in sadaqah. They would say that's good enough for one hasana, because it's a serious thought that the person had. But if a person now were to take out their financial planning document or whatever, start to look at the ins and outs, start to actually consider all the different ways that's possible to enact this thought, they would get a lot more. even if they didn't do it, because they actually, that's like now a strong determination. They actually had a gumption inside of them, a determination, a will to actually get this hasana locked in. It just doesn't work out for whatever reason. They don't get the bonus, or maybe even they forget. Something else happens that completely derails this thought. It's not necessarily that they just didn't get the chance, even though that's the height of it, as the scholars have said. Ibn Hajar says the height of this is what we hear in Surah Tawbah, where these people came to the Prophet ﷺ, and he's gathering for the army to face off with the Roman Empire, needs a lot of funds, it's a far distance, needs to travel, and we've spoken about this before. And Sahaba came and said, look, we have nothing. Has any charity come in for a ride, for weapons, because we desperately need it? And he said, I'll get back to you when it comes, and it doesn't come. So they come over and over again, say, has anything come in? Anyone gave a ride? Anyone has room on their ride that we can get on? Absolutely not, absolutely not. After a few times, they left crying. Like, oh, he's about to leave, and we physically can't make it. So they cried that they couldn't lay their lives on the line against a world superpower, travel for months at a time through the desert to do that. So they're so desperate for the opportunity because they know it's pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, تَوَلَّوْا أَعْيُنُهُمْ تَفِيضُ مِنَ الدَّمْعِ حَزَنًا أَلَّا يَجِدُوا مَا يُنْفِقُونَ. They turned away from you, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, while their eyes overflowed with tears out of grief that they couldn't find what to give for the cause of Allah. That's the height of it now. But the lowest of it is simply, if I get the opportunity, I would like to do that. And you mean it, that's good enough for hasana. How many times do you do that? Pretty often, right? You see someone who is engaged in any type of act of worship and you say, I would like to do that. That thought, Allah will give you a hasana for it. That's the beauty of it. How easy is that thought? Just to think good. Assume good of yourself. But don't let the thought come in that say, but I'm not that religious. But that's not how I speak. That's not how I act. That's not how I dress. Get rid of all that. Imagine yourself doing it. Say, that would be awesome and I would love it. Just that, Allah gives you a hasana. It's free. It's easy. Of course, now you move on to the next step of actually doing it and you get more, as we'll get to. So it's a feeling of the heart. It's a determination. It's an intention. There's some kind of keenness in there, some kind of will, even if it doesn't translate into actual action. And the Prophet ﷺ told us, إِنَّمَا الدُّنْيَا لِأَرْبَعَ نَفَرٍ. This world has 4 people in it. First person, عَبْدٍ رَزَقَهُ اللَّهُ مَالًا وَعِلْمًا. A servant that Allah gave him knowledge of the deen and wealth. So he fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he spends with it, he keeps the ties of kinship, he teaches other people, he gives the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's the best kind of person. They got power, they got authority maybe, they got wealth, and they got knowledge, so they're able to do everything correctly and maximize the good that they do. وَعَبْدٍ رَزَقَهُ اللَّهُ عِلْمًا وَلَمْ يَرْزُقْهُ مَالًا. But in another servant now, the second category, he has knowledge, he knows what's right and wrong, he cares about all that, and he has a desire to do it, but he's missing what? He's missing the money. He's missing the means. He's missing the power. فَهُوَ صَادِقٌ النِّيَّةِ. And he is true in his intention. He's just waiting for that opportunity. The second I get money, the second I get stronger, the second I get authority, I will do it for the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whatever everyone else is doing, whatever that first person is doing. So he's true in his intention. يَقُولُ لَوْ أَنَّ لِي مَالًا لَعَمِلْتُ بِعَمَلِ فُلَانٍ. If I have money, I'll do like that first person. That's what he tells himself. فَأَجْرُهُمَا سَوَاء. They get an equal share of reward. Allah will give him the equal piece. What stopped him? Who stopped him from actually doing it? Allah. It was Allah that said, you will not get that rizq. So Allah said, I decreed for you to have a different test. It was nothing in your ability. If it was within your ability, you would have done it. But I'm the one who decided to divert you for whatever wisdom that Allah sees. Because it's His choice to divert you, and you had no power over that, He's going to say you get an equal share of reward. Because the true intention, and you see that the Prophet ﷺ emphasized it more than once. He's true in his intention. He says, if I have money, I'll do as Fulan does. فَهُوَ بِنِيَّتِهِ. And he has the same intention. The Prophet ﷺ said it 3 times, meaning this guy's determined. It's not a passing thought. It's not like whimsical, like, man, if I was a trillionaire, I'd give the masjid $50 more. No. It's like, if Allah gives me, you just wait. I'm waiting for the day. Once that happens, I'm going to be just like this person, if not better. And they may plan for it, they may work towards it, they may check all the possible opportunities to get to that same level, and it just doesn't happen. Allah doesn't will it. Who's the third person now? You can deduce it from the way the hadith is going. The first person has knowledge and wealth. Second person has knowledge but no wealth. Who's going to be the third person? Wealth but no knowledge, right? So this person, the third person has wealth but no knowledge. So he doesn't fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he doesn't keep the ties of kinship, he doesn't give the rights of Allah from his wealth, he doesn't do any good with it. فَهَذَا بِأَخْبَثِ الْمَنَازِلِ. That's the worst of people. This worldly life, whoever has it but doesn't have deen, it's useless. It's absolutely useless. It's not going to lead them anywhere good. He's the worst of people. وَعَبْدٍ لَمْ يَرْزُقُ اللَّهُ مَالًا وَلَا عِلْمًا. And now the fourth person has neither knowledge nor wealth. And he says, if I did have wealth, I would do like that third person. And I've seen this sadly, like I went to an unnamed Muslim country. Should I name it? Should we? Look, you guys are... I was not going to name it. I just wanted to see how you guys would react. You said yes really, really fast. So that's interesting. No, I won't say it. Because I love this. I love the suspense. It's so much funner. And I was getting a haircut. And then the barber was like, you're from America, right? And I said, yes. And then he started quizzing me about like a variety of sins. Yeah. Clubbing, this, that, I swear. Going down. I said, no, I don't do that. And he's just looking at me like, get out of this chair. His friend comes in. He's like, bro, come in here. Mid-haircut. He's like, this kid's from America. And he doesn't, and the kid's like, what's wrong with you? Are you okay? And like they're both like accosting me over this, rap sheet that I don't have, alhamdulillah. And they're just like, man, what a loser, right? Like there's like, I can't believe you have all these opportunities and you don't take any of them. That was like the reaction. And I'm not gonna lie, I left feeling like a loser even though it was a nice haircut. But that's the power of peer pressure, right? So I hope that they don't get the sin of what they desperately wish they were able to commit, but that's sadly that's the case with a lot of people. They're simply waiting for the opportunity to engage in evil, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala simply diverts them to another path so that they can choose better, but they still just look at the other path and say, I wish I was there. Allah said, no, don't come to America, don't be born here, because if you did, you'd completely dissolve. But then they look across the ocean and say, man, I wish I was there and doing all that. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is only fair that this person gets what he intended, because the weight of the heart, the weight of your conviction is so much heavier than everything else. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala emphasized that so much in our tradition, the Quran and the teachings of His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The conviction in your heart is actually the heaviest. Because someone might ask, isn't doing it actually worse? It is. It objectively is. But the conviction of your heart has a heavy weight. You had a hand up, brother? So that's what the hadith is saying, this hadith. But we're going to get to, but we just talked about this, this is the hadith that we took a break to say, but the main hadith that we started with says whoever intends to say yeah, but doesn't do it gets a what? Hasana. So we're going to differentiate, we're going to talk about the difference now. We're going to talk about the difference, we're getting there. We have the hadith, إِذَا الْتَقَى الْمُسْلِمَانِ بِسَيْفِهِمَا فَالْقَاتِلُ وَالْمَقْتُولُ فِي النَّارِ فَقُلْتُ يَا رَسُولُ اللَّهِ هَذَا الْقَاتِلُ فَمَا بَالَ الْمَقْتُولُ قَالَ إِنَّهُ كَانَ حَرِيصًا عَلَى قَتْلِ صَاحِبِهِ. The Prophet ﷺ said when two Muslims meet with their swords, the killer and the killed are in the hellfire. So the Sahaba asked him, O Messenger of Allah, the victim we understand. What about, the murderer we understand. What about the victim? He said he was keen on killing the other one. He just wasn't strong enough. He just wasn't as good of a sword fighter. He just wasn't fast enough. So it's not like he's not a victim here. Yeah, he was killed, but he's not a victim. They were both transgressors. Just one's transgressor was stronger than the other. It's two evil people. One of them his evil was stronger. So it's not a murderer and a victim. It is the killer and the killed, but they're both getting sin for what they intended. So the point of this hadith is not to say that if you intend a sayyah, you get a sayyah, because we already said in the other hadith that's not it, and we're getting there. But it's to clarify what hem is. He says, man hemma, whoever has hem. What is hem? A determined will with effort. So the guy that doesn't have money is watching the other guy who has money and spending in evil and actively keeping up with him. Actively seeing his moves, actively following his feet and saying, I want to do that, I want to do that. Save that to my collection. Save that to things to do in Dubai. And they're actively waiting for it, and it's more of a hem than just a passing thought. While the passing thought is not rewarded or punished. It's a very quick passing thought on your mind, right? It has no effect on your heart or your convictions. These are hadith, we are going over them to clarify what hem is. It is a determination in the heart, and then it is rewarded and punished accordingly. So intending to do a good deed gets you a hasanah. The highest level of it is to have hem, actual intention, actual effort, actual planning, and some keenness to do it. That will definitely reward you. The lower you get with that, and the more of a passing thought it is, the less likely you'll be rewarded. And then inshallah we'll get to the sayyah now. The next point he said is now actually doing the hasanah will get you the lowest tier is 10 times the reward. 10 times the reward doesn't mean, here he's saying a hasanah, but how much is a hasanah worth? He said moving a harmful object from the road of people is a hasanah. Is that equal to salah? Is that equal to jihad for the sake of Allah? Is that equal to making your parents smile? No. There's worlds, leaps and bounds between these hasanat in their weight. And even then they get multiplied. So the minimum is times 10. That's the default. Up to 700. And he said, and Allah wills far more than that, to show us that there's no limit. You could do one good thing and it's your ticket to go soaring high. The Prophet ﷺ told us the hadith of a prostitute. Someone whose life, whose income is from zina, day in and day out. Right? Contributing to the decadence of society. So many levels of evil. Not just someone who commits zina on a personal level. This is their profession. And all of that is forgiven for what? What did she do? She died a martyr. She prayed all night. She gave $1 billion in sadaqah. She changed the world. She's unnamed in the hadith and no one will ever know her. What did she do? She gave water to a thirsty dog. And Allah saw the sincerity in her heart and He forgave her. It's like the conviction is so heavy. We don't know the rest of the story. Maybe she repented, maybe this, we don't know. Or maybe she didn't. But good deeds, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can multiply them as far as He wills. And the secret factor is your sincerity. The Prophet ﷺ said, رُبَّ dirhamin, perhaps a single gold coin will surpass, or a single silver coin will surpass 100,000. This guy gives 100,000 and you give $1 and your dollar is more weighty because of this. How sincere. So how far will things get multiplied? It's up to you. You lock into a season like this, Ramadan now, where things are multiplied even further, or there's even more virtue. How far can you go? What is that one salah of Taraweeh worth? That one page of Quran worth these days? Ibn Rajab, he says, if the dead could wish for anything, they would wish to come back for one Ramadan hour. Because they know how much it's worth. They can see it now. That they can see how much that multiplying factor goes and how essential every single Ramadan hour is. Next he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but whoever intends an evil deed and does not do it will be given a hasanah. So this seems to contradict the first one, except the difference is the hem, as some scholars have mentioned. This person intends to do an evil deed and doesn't do it willingly, chooses not to do it. As opposed to the first one that we were talking about, when we were talking about him, he's just waiting for the opportunity to do it. So why can't he do it? Because the opportunity hasn't presented themselves. Well, for this person, it was a passing thought. It may have been an intention, but they willingly choose not to do it. And another hadith makes that clearer where the Prophet ﷺ said that Allah says, they leave it off min ajli, for my sake. I could do this. It's not difficult for me to set up. I can see the roadway to it. I choose not to. You get a hasanah. Because inaction is also an action. Abstinence is also an action, right? What's the proof of that? What's an easy proof that abstinence is an action that you get rewarded for? You do it every day. Fasting, yeah, right? You're abstaining from stuff. You're not doing anything. You're just not eating, not drinking, not engaging in sexual activity with the intention that it's for Allah. So abstention is an action that you get rewarded for just like action. Doing gets rewarded just like abstaining, refraining from doing gets rewarded. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from His blessings over us, is that if you see an evil deed, you could see yourself doing it, you could see how it could work out. You say, no, this is haram. I willingly choose to walk away. You get a hasanah. And that could also be multiplied as well. So this is very, very important. وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ وَنَهَى النَّفْسَ عَنِ الْهَوَى فَإِنَّ الْجَنَّةَ هِيَ الْمَأْوَى. As for the one who fears their standing in front of Allah and prevents their self from what it desires, from what is haram, then Jannah is the abode. That's where you're headed. Right? This is the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for preventing yourself from doing things that are haram. And then from His mercy as well is that if you do a sayyah, it's worth One sayyah. They don't get multiplied. The default is that they don't get multiplied, while the default of hasanat is that they're always multiplied by at least 10. Do sayyi'at get multiplied? Ever? Is there any multiplication of sayyi'at ever? The default is no, but is there situations, ya Adil? In holy seasons. In holy seasons, they're worse off. That's why when people curse, they say, hey man, not in the masjid. So it's not like the wisest thing, but it kind of makes sense. Like, you're disrespecting, not only is the curse itself a sin, but another sin is the added disrespect of where you are. Right? We know that sins in the haram are multiplied. Anything else? Yeah, Ahmed? So, when you share it, it's a separate sin. We're talking about like the default, you do one sin and it gets multiplied in and of itself. The share is multiplied because other people did it. So it's multiple actions are occurring. Not necessarily that one sin is multiplied. There's also the sacred months, right? You have Rajab, Muharram, Dhul Hijjah, and Dhul Qa'dah. So there's other situations. You had a hand up? Just waving at me? It's good to see you too. So it's from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one sayyah is worth one. But just like when we said about the hasanat, not all sayyat are worth the same. Some are heavier. Some are much heavier and much more significant. So it's important to keep in mind that there's a system of how things are recorded. Because that way I'll know the exact blueprint of what to do and where I'm going to end up. It's not a mystery. It's not a mystery about how I will be dealt with in my judgment. In addition to the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving me this opportunity, this power up where things are stacked in my favor. Imam Nawawi, he says in conclusion at the end of this hadith, his own wording, one of the few places where he adds a bit, he says, my dear brother, my dear sibling in Islam, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant me and you tawfiq. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us to what pleases Him the most. Look at Allah's subtle kindness with us. That He's looking at how to make things, He's telling us that I've did all the details for you. I've made it stacked in your favor. And He said that when He records deeds, He said, عِنْدَهُ, with Him. He's keeping it close. It's with me. I'm keeping your record. You won't be oppressed. You won't miss out on anything that you deserve. In fact, I'll give you more. He's saying this record is with me. I'm keeping it close and I'm paying attention to it. And then He says when He talked about recording the hasanat, He said, kamila, fully. Not going to shortchange you. I don't need to check with anyone if it's okay. I don't need to check with anyone if you deserve less or more. This is what I'm choosing to give you. And He says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also emphasizes the sayyi'ah by saying one. He mentioned the word one, sayyi'ah wahida, telling you that it's stacked in your favor again. You will never be punished more than you deserve. But you will be rewarded more than you deserve from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, so to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala belongs all praise, all grace. He is far above any imperfection. We cannot praise Him enough for His bounties, and all the grace is from Him. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed us that the system actually works in your favor. All you got to do is lock in. Be always planning hasanat. Think of the next one. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, he said, the believer dies between two hasanat. One that he just performed, and one that he was just about to perform. That's the believer's life. When the angel of death takes him, he's between hasanat. He's either doing one live and he dies in that hasanah, or he's in between them. I just finished one, I'm on my way to another. That's how your mindset has to be. That is how you lock in and achieve the most out of not just Ramadan, but your entire life. So if you ever feel daunted by things not being in your favor, that's true. It's very difficult. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala balanced it out by saying there's tons of things that are in your favor. There's inner workings of the very account that you will face that I wanted to make easier for you, more conducive for you to be a good Muslim. It's from the mercy and the bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He facilitated things for us in such an epic fashion. So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is your biggest ally and your biggest supporter. He is cheering for your comeback. He's cheering for your journey. He wants you to do more. He's saying, here, this will make it easier. Here, this will push you further. Your effort gets you here. No, I want you up here. And He's constantly throwing these things your way, not just with the system of hasanat and sayyi'at, but in the very methodology, the very effort, the very journey that you take towards Him. He actually does a lot more than you. He actually does most of the work. And that is the hadith of next week, inshallah, with our special guest, Ustad Abdul Min'im. So we'll switch over to the questions. We have a Slido if you want to ask them, inshallah, anonymously. What is the Slido code? Anyone seen my phone? not that one. Someone asked which one wanted to be 3255 414. Anonymous questions can go to Slido code. Say it again, sorry. I lost it. 3255 414. 3255 414. Can someone send me the link, please? And in the meantime, people can ask questions live, like normal people. Yes, Ahmed.
How do you know if you're the one planning to make a sin, or is it shaitan coming into your head? If it's not Ramadan, or is it bringing to your head? Sorry.
You can't. It's difficult to be sure. Is this a thought from shaitan or is it my own nafs? So we have something like Ramadan where we know that shaitan is weakened or completely gone. Those are the two possibilities. Either very weakened, so fiddat al-shayateen, the Prophet ﷺ said the shayateen have been chained. So some interpret it to mean that they're completely out of the picture. And some means that their influence is severely decreased. Either way, it's a good indication that you need to work on you now, and whatever evil that you're committing or struggling with, there's a part of it that's ingrained in you. Right? Shaitan, for a lot of people, comes back after Ramadan and they're exactly as he left them. He put them on autopilot. He said, here, keep these things going while I'm gone, and they said, you got it. He comes back, he picks up where he left off. Nothing changed. Right? So that is a real struggle of Ramadan. You can't always tell the difference. Your job is just to resist all the same. Of course, some sudden, especially evil thought, that's most likely from shaitan. You say, A'udhu billahi min shaitan rajim, you hopefully that's that. Like, like punch him in the face right now. Like, something that's exceptionally wicked and like out of nowhere and strong, and especially in a moment of anger, those are most likely from shaitan. But again, it's impossible to tell the exact origin, and it's not super important because either way, your method and your formula is going to be the same. Say, A'udhu billahi min shaitan rajim, change your environment, try to get, change your friends group, try to check out your triggers. It's always going to be the same to go to methodology, whether it's from shaitan or someone else. You're going to end up doing both because you don't know the origin. Is it possible to perform good deeds with the intention of passing on the reward or hasanat to those who have already passed away, such as parents? Yes, it is. And according to some scholars, or many scholars, it's permissible to pass on deeds to anybody, whether they are dead or alive, as long as they are Muslim, as long as they're Muslim. So that is the official opinion of the Hanbali madhab, which is you do any good deed and you intend for it to be given to a fellow Muslim, that happens. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows that, and you can gift your hasanat. You just intend that, I intend that this person, I'm reading Quran on behalf of this person. And some scholars have said it's only for those who are deceased and cannot perform it. And some scholars viewed it, like I said, as more liberal, that is applicable to live and dead. So if you want to do that, that's a beautiful thing, and you get a share of the reward as well. How do we not waste time during Ramadan, especially when it comes to impulsively checking your phone, playing games? So if things are huge time wasters for you, set up blocks. Maybe this is a good month to detox. Whatever the game is or whatever the app is, why don't you delete it for this month? Or at the very least, set a timer. Put a timer of, what's a good timer for Instagram in this month? Someone shout out a number. I'm going to judge you guys so hard. Go ahead. An hour? 30 minutes, I would say, is the upper limit. An hour is tripping. An hour is nuts. If you do an hour a day, that's 30 hours. That's a whole Ramadan day and a night plus 6 hours. That's insane. 30 minutes a day is half of that, which is 12 hours, right? 30 minutes a day would be 15 hours. What's wrong, guys? Use your math. 15 hours of the whole month. That's more than half a day. Is half a Ramadan day worth a half hour of Instagram a day? So I would suggest a very minimal timer. Work, if for now, once the last 10 comes in, completely obliterate all that stuff. You got to lock in. So my advice is, if there's apps or games that are taking your time, put a timer on them now and try to work it out to 0 if you can. If you can't, make it something absolutely minimal. With games, it's very hard. By the time you finish logging in, it's 10 minutes already. Or setting things up for whatever mission you got to do, whatever nonsense, right? It's like a real life job that you don't get paid for. Or hasanat. And they squander your time from other things. So I don't know what to tell you, right? At least in this month, and we all struggle with it. I'm not judging you, except silently. Is there any reading material you recommend for controlling and understanding the nafs? Yes, there is. There's a book by Ibn Rajab called Disciplining the Soul. That's very good. And there is a book that is also similarly about your spiritual journey called Mukhtasar Minhaj al-Qasidin that I advise everyone to read. It's a very, very useful book in the journey of your soul, your spiritual development, the thoughts that you should have, the thoughts that you should avoid, the actions that are key to lock into, the actions that are key to stay away from. It's called Mukhtasar Minhaj al-Qasidin, which translates into the journey towards the hereafter, I think. Those who are seeking the hereafter, something like that. If you search that with the name Ibn Qudama next to it, it'll come up. Mukhtasar Minhaj al-Qasidin. M-U-K-H-T-A-R is the first word. The second word is M-I-N-H-A-J. And by the time you get to that, Google will complete it. That's an excellent book to start with. That and Disciplining the Soul, or The Journey of the Soul by Ibn Rajab. Can someone who's no longer religious continue to get hasanat because of something good that they taught you that you continue to use today? Of course. Of course. Ibn Bakhshawal, he was a scholar, he said there was a man named Mistah that was not a righteous man. He was known for his shamelessness. He was known to be shameless. He's what we would call today the equivalent of like someone who goes on Instagram and posts, had a crazy night last night, haha, blacked out, stuff like that. Completely sharing his sins. He was shameless. He was not a good person. And one of the students of knowledge that would come to the masjid and sit at the feet of the shuyukh saw him in a dream. So he told him, Mistah, what's your hereafter look like? Where are you now? You're a horrible person. And he says, Allah forgave me all of my sins. He says, why? He says, one day I went to your teacher, I went to the shaykh, and I asked him about one hadith. And he said the hadith, and when he said the name of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I repeated it after him, and my voice was louder. So the rest of the gathering heard it, and they repeated after me. And Allah didn't just forgive me that day, He forgave all of us. He's not a righteous person. He's not a student. The student saw him in the dream and said, hey man, where are you? You must be somewhere horrible. And he said, Allah forgave us all that day because I cascaded the name of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam down to the end of the gathering. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa zid wa barak ala Sayyidina Muhammad tasliman kathira. So yeah, righteousness, wickedness, how far deeds go, that is up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not me or you. There's tons of people who were considered wicked by some who are probably reaping in rewards that no one knows about. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the final judge. It's not our job to decide who's wicked or who's righteous. They taught good. Inshallah, it's coming to them and helping them wherever they are. Is it possible to do things for the sake of Allah and still be insincere? A person can cry in dua and still lack sincerity. How does that happen and why? So sincerity is a struggle that you go through all throughout your life. It's going to be back and forth. One action it's not a single setting that you lock into and never changes, or that you're locked out of and never changes. One action could be more sincere than others. There's a gradient of sincerity, right? There's a spectrum of it. And there's a certain level of minimum acceptability. All that is a journey that you're going to continue to go through your whole life. If you doubt your sincerity, that's a good sign. You should be doing that till the very last moment. If you don't doubt your sincerity and you're 100% sincere, you're sure of that, that's the first red flag that there's something wrong. That's just how it is. A sign of sincerity is, I'm not sure in my own sincerity. And you continue towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, always rectifying, always refining, always looking through the nooks and crannies, always filling in the cracks, to level up your deeds every single season, every single week, every single day. Improving the quality of the form, of the intention behind it, of the planning behind it, and that is your journey. That's all of our journeys that never ends. So doubting your sincerity is a positive sign. Feeling insincere at times is a positive sign, and you're just continuously working on it. The sincere people are working on it till the very last minute, while the insincere people are sure of themselves most of the time. So these are the first markers, and it is a lifelong journey, so don't sweat it. If you're doubting your sincerity, if you're struggling with it, that is a good sign. That means keep struggling. That's the answer. Yes, Yassine.
Does that mean like, if you don't know if you're sincere as a person or with a specific action? Like, you know that you're sincere about a specific action?
You could feel, I feel good about this action. Like, alhamdulillah, I tried my best. Hopefully, you say hopefully it was sincere. It's okay to feel a little bit better about it, but you should never have like that certainty. Man, alhamdulillah, that salah was locked in. Can't wait to see it, and it's locked in, I have it for sure. No, you don't have that guarantee. But to feel better about this action, you feel like, you know what, I was locked in that salah, I had khushu', I was feeling it, and I'm happy about that, there's nothing wrong with it. You just want to avoid that certainty of, that deed's accepted, going to Jannah, see you there. Right, like that pastor who said, if you are in paradise and you don't see me, you're in hell, right? You remember that guy? I wonder where he is now. So that level of confidence is so absurd, and anything near it, like that's ridiculous, but anything near it, some people get close to that as well. They say, alhamdulillah, I've done 3 hajjas, like, what's left in life? No, these are worrisome signs. But to say I felt good about that hajj, it was focused, I felt good about that salah, that's not wrong. You just want to tread carefully. Do you get punished for not having enough knowledge about Islam and not actively seeking it as much as you should? Yes. In Islam, you're liable for 2 things. And we'll talk about this tomorrow with the hadith that we're going to go over, the story. You're liable for what you know and what you're able to find out, what's accessible for you. The Prophet ﷺ, he sent some men on an expedition, and one of them got his head cleaved in. His head's open. The inside's showing. They wrapped it to the best of their ability, but he has a huge gash in his head, literally. He has a wet dream. He says, what can I do, guys? My head is open. Literally, my mind is showing, right? They said, wet dream equals ghusl. You can't make wudu here. So he's like, what am I going to do? I make ghusl, right? I have to be pure. I have to pray. He makes ghusl. The water gets inside his head. He dies. They go to the Prophet ﷺ to share the story. He says, قَتَلُوهُ قَتَلَهُمُ اللَّهُ. They killed him. May Allah kill them. And the Prophet ﷺ didn't react so strongly to people who didn't know better. He didn't react so strongly to people who made a mistake. He said, this isn't a mistake. I'm right here. All you had to do was walk a couple of steps over and say, O Messenger of Allah, does he have to make ghusl because his head is open? And he would have said, إِنَّمَا يَكْفِيهِ الْمَسْحِ or يَكْفِيهِ الْوُدُوء. As the hadith says, it would have been enough that he did tayammum or just wiped over or around it and so on and so forth. You guys could have just asked. Instead, you chose to give a fatwa. It literally killed someone that's coming back your way. So they could have answered, well, we didn't know better. No, you had access to know better. So you're liable for both, what you know and what you have access to know, what you're able to know. So somebody in today's age of information, with all this at their fingertips, with so much available online, they're not going to be treated the same as somebody who's in a village somewhere who can barely afford to eat, or someone in Gaza who is busy running away from bombs day in and day out and trying not to starve to death to be able to seek Islamic knowledge. That I don't know is a lot different than the I don't know that we have here, and they will be treating accordingly. How do I get over the fact that I have to force myself to pray sometimes? The fact that you're praying even though you feel like that is excellent. Because that is what Islam is. Islam is submission. Meaning Allah calls the shots. I feel like it, I don't feel like it. I'm not going to leave it up to when I feel like it or not. You don't always feel like eating, but you eat every day. You don't always feel like upkeeping your body, but you generally do that because you know that other people will be affected by it. So you don't always feel like doing things, but you still do them, don't you? You don't feel like going to school every day. You don't feel like going to work every day. Do you still do that? Yeah, you do. So separate the feeling from the obligation. That's step number 1. Do it anyway. Just do it. Nike had the right idea about that one. So the first step is to separate the emotion. You don't have to feel every single day. That's okay. But you have to do it every single day. Once you can do that, it's going to get a lot easier. Number 2 is, what's stopping the feeling? There's obstacles that are stopping you from connecting. Find them. Do you understand what you're saying in prayer? Do you change things up? Do you have different options? Or every single prayer, whether it's Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Fajr, Isha, or Taraweeh, resembles the same thing. The same exact cookie cutter formula. Of course it's going to become routine. You can do it in your sleep. You don't have to focus. Your brain will struggle to focus because it's so rote, it's so mundane. It's been repeated day in and day out. There's nothing new about it. There's nothing excited, so your brain's not interested. So explore why you don't feel it. First of all, separate the feeling from the action of obligation. Because we do tons of stuff that we don't feel like doing because we understand that we have to do them. You got to lock into that first and foremost. After that, work on the feeling. It's not you either have it or you don't. There's a process of gaining that feeling, engaging in spirituality, and it changes from action to action. It begins by knowing the ins and outs about it, and it begins with knowing the why. Why do I pray? Why do I fast? So all that information is available. Look it up, make a list of the whys and the hows and the wheres, and inshallah that feeling will be something that begins to grow inside of you. How do we make sure our intentions stay pure? And how do we prevent self-sabotage? So you're always renewing your intention. Before you start the action, you simply ask yourself, why am I doing this? What do I want from it? What are the goals? How do I picture it working out? Make sure that's all of those questions are answered in a manner that's pleasing to Allah. How do I do the action? How do I make that pleasing to Allah? When I'm thinking about the how, when I'm picturing myself doing it, what does that how have to look like? It's not rhetorical. What is everyone staring at me for? How do I, if I want to make sure that the how matches in a manner that's pleasing to Allah, what's the one word answer for that? No, not sincerity. Not the intention. That's the question is about the intention. I'm saying you go over all these other things. The how is the sunnah, how the Prophet ﷺ did it. That's the guaranteed way that it will be, the form is acceptable. So the why now. What did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell me that this action exists for? Why do we fast? What is the purpose of fasting? To gain taqwa. So that is my why. Am I gaining taqwa, which means fear of Allah, obedience of Him, love of Him, consciousness of Him? Am I gaining that through fasting? Am I thinking more of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? When you detail all these things, you have a roadmap that will allow you now to improve your intention and double check it every step of the way. What does that mean? If I look at the how, it doesn't match the Prophet ﷺ's how, I can start to doubt my intention. Why do I want to do it the way that the Messenger ﷺ taught me? That's a good sign that maybe there's some kind of insincerity. I could look at the why. Why am I doing this action? If it doesn't match the why that Allah told me, that's another marker of sincerity. So these are very easy markers you can check, because for a lot of people, they feel like, oh, it's so unknown. Like they expect to look in the mirror and see a bar on their forehead, 98% sincere. No, I can work on it a little bit more. Today's a zero. You're never going to have that. These are the markers that you're given so that you can navigate. Does the how match the Prophet ﷺ? Check. Okay, you're on the right track. Does the why match what Allah told you? Does that matches? Okay, check. Now you have to see other things, like do I do it the same in front of people as I do in private? How much do I focus on my salah when I'm alone versus when I'm in public? How much good do I have in a private store that no one knows about between me and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? All these things are markers. There's no 100%, but these are all good markers. If they all check out, you're on the right track. Keep going and improve. If they're not on the right track, you check them one by one. Make sure you're following the sunnah, make sure the wise match, and so on and so forth. It's not as hard as people think. Of course, the struggle of sincerity never ends, so that's by default a little bit difficult. But the checking process, you always just go right back to these questions. You'll very likely find kinks in those questions, and that's where you start. It's very easy. Is it permissible to tell your parent their breath smells bad? Or how should you go act in this situation? You should relish and smell in as deeply as you can. Stop laughing. Because they smell your feces for years on end. You got some nerve asking this question. I'm glad you're anonymous. I'm going to find you. No, I'm kidding. But for real, think of that. I don't care who you are. It's your business. It's your problem. No seriousness. Stop it. You tend to forget that when Ramadan, all deeds are multiplied. We're talking about qiyam, we're talking about dua, we're talking about dhikr. If you get to do none of that in expense of serving your parents, washing the dishes, that's more reward than standing in qiyam, crying every single night on these rugs. Don't get it twisted. Birrul Walidain is the default highest, and it's even higher in Ramadan. Tell yourself, one of my goals in Ramadan is to be my parents' left shoe. And you're going to go so much further than anybody else. Take it from me. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. How do we go about getting a mentor for our Islamic growth and journey? That's a good question. I don't know. Always be looking around, anybody who has the ability to give you the time of day, to give you some kind of insight, latch onto that. It's hard to find one single mentor these days because of just people's time constraints, just because of what's available. So somebody could be your mentor in seeking knowledge, while someone else is your mentor in Quran, while someone else is your mentor in Arabic. So you might have to split up that mentorship amongst 50 people until you find one that could do 5 of these objectives or 10 of them. And you're always seeking more. You're always leveling up. This person, you're done with them. You've exhausted what they have to offer. Move on to the next. So it's tough to find one traditional mentor, one traditional sheikh who will fill in all the nooks and crannies and all the questions that you have. That's a lot harder, but see if you could find separate mentors for every single category. That way, when you have a Quran question, you have an Arabic question, you have a tazkiyah question about the spirit, you have a question about leadership and management, all these things, you know where to go to for all of these things, and you have separate mentors, and you're always on the lookout for the jack of all trades, or somebody who does ihsan in a lot of what they do and is able to offer a lot more, and has the time. Maybe inshallah one day you'll find that, maybe not, but you're always looking, and you're always taking what you can find. And inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will guide you along the way. How can one do ihsan to their parents if they treat them harshly? So that's your job. That is your job. Be on the lookout of every single opportunity to serve them, to please them, even if that objective doesn't get complete. Are they actually happy in the end is irrelevant. Are they actually going to say, my son, my daughter, stamp of approval? That's irrelevant. That's not what you're going for. You're going for exhausting yourself in what pleases your Creator the most. Because you can meet Him on the Day of Judgment and say, they cared nothing for it, but I have it all in store for you. I know you tried your heart out to please them. I know you made it a goal. I know how much it cost you. I know how much it hurt you. And here's the reward from me, because that's what you're seeking. Their pleasure is only a vehicle to the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's only so significant because He made it so significant. So if they give it to you in the end, or not, or they verbalize it or not, or the complete opposite, yeah, it helps. I'm not going to lie. Helps immensely, but it should not be the objective. Because if your objective is for them to just smile at you, that's not for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because they could do that just to appease you, like, no, I love you, Habibi is the best, and they don't really feel it. And you know that. But you say, okay, I got their stamp of approval, I'm done, I can run with it. People do that all the time. So you're seeking their pleasure insofar as it is a vehicle for the pleasure of your Creator, because He made it so significant. And it is the most significant thing in our deen after Tawheed. So they treat you harshly, detour, recalibrate. Right, the GPS goes blub, blub, and finds another route, you do that. You don't have to make the sound. So constantly be on the lookout. That's your life journey. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded ihsan here, which is trying your absolute best. How do I go about learning new things as a new Muslim without feeling overwhelmed? It's a great question. Start with the prayer. The 5 daily prayers is the number one action. Someone's going to come up to you and say, do this or do that. You could put all that aside, 100% of it. Whatever you're comfortable with, you could do. But if you want to put it 100% aside till you say, I want to get these 5 daily prayers down from their wudu, their purity, for when it comes down to the actions and the words that you say, I want to find every detail about the prayer inside out, and I won't stop till I know all 5 prayers like the back of my hand. That's enough of a journey to begin with. Everything else can be put aside, outside of immediate obligations like something like fasting Ramadan. So that's where I tell you to start. And to give all your focus. Through that, you'll unlock so much more than trying to grab other things. Then from there, you work on other priorities. If you got the prayer down, then you could start looking at, maybe learning Arabic or learning Quran, or other good deeds that you could fill your day with, like dhikr, things that are easy and accessible that will be easy to add to your routine. Always be seeking knowledge. Always find gatherings of knowledge where knowledge is being disseminated and taught, and try to capitalize on as much as possible so that you're always learning something new. And then prioritize with the obligations like prayer, like fasting and other things. So begin with the prayer is my main advice. My second advice would be try to follow some kind of series or teacher online and make that your main to go to so you don't get overwhelmed by a bunch of different speakers, a bunch of different things. Cover one series at a time. A series on the names and attributes of Allah is a great start. Who is my Creator? Another series that you could follow up with is, maybe a Ramadan series on the afterlife. So you follow that, and everything else is noise. You say, let me focus on this. That way you won't get overwhelmed. So you're covering both ends. The obligations that have to come first, like prayer and whatnot. And then after that is the continued growth through other aspects of our deen. In addition, I would say begin with the 5 pillars of Islam and the 6 pillars of Iman. The 5 pillars of Iman, the Shahada, the prayer, fasting Ramadan, zakah and hajj. The 6 pillars of faith, belief in Allah, belief in His prophets, belief in His angels, belief in the scriptures, belief in the Day of Judgment, and then belief in the divine decree. These 11 things should be your roadmap. Find one series online about them, and inshallah you can begin there. Is it possible for a Muslim who passed but was no longer following Islam and never repented but did good throughout their life to be granted Jannah? The conditions to be granted Jannah is to die upon faith. Right? That is the requisite. That is a requirement. You got to work here to get paid. You have to work in a company to get paid. Is that absurd to anybody? Does that sound strange? You have to perform, you have to have a contract of service, right? That's how everything functions in the professional world. So once that contract is nullified, once that employment is terminated, we owe you nothing. That's how it works in every single institution, every single school, every single career, every single organization, and we accept it and we recognize that it makes sense. So with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's no different. And His requirements are a lot less than any of these other jobs or any of these other people. He has 2-sentence requirement, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, and nothing that contradicts that. Keep those whole. And then you have that guarantee that you'll eventually enter Jannah and eventually be forgiven. So that's something that's beyond our control. Everybody has their own individual journey, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the final judge. What did every single person die upon? We don't know. Right? We can't really tell. We have no 100% indication, and we'll only find out in the Day of Judgment. It's not something that should concern us, the fate of other people, especially after they passed. How can I stop a haram relationship, and what are some next steps that one should do after? The best way to stop a haram relationship is to nip it in the bud immediately. Block them. Don't say goodbye. This user is no longer on Instagram. That's what they need to see. If it's like a long letter of like, hey, look, man, you're going to fail. I know between us was, but I have to, you're going to fail. Their response is going to pull on your heartstrings. Block them, nip it in the bud. No message is necessary. Move on with your life and move on. That's it. Completely get them out of your mind. Block all their pages. Block all their social media. Block their number. No pictures. No type of information reaches you about them whatsoever. That's the best advice I can give you. Either that or make it halal. Get married immediately. Which I know is not very practical for most people and not feasible. But if it is, why would I not give you that option? It's something that you could do. But for most people, it's not immediately available. So that's the answer. And then after that, you have a long road of recovery now. Of pulling yourself away from these emotions and these experiences that have polluted your mind and your heart. So you are now weakened. You're in a weakened spiritual state because you've allowed these things in. You want to repent, that's excellent. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is aiding you. You got to take these drastic steps and it will work. If they're not drastic steps, they're bit by bit. They're taking it one piece at a time, one step at a time. In this specific category, you will fail. It's not going to work. Is it true that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps someone in a cycle of sin and repentance instead of making it easier to stop that sinful habit? That could be true. That does happen at times. وَجَزَاءُ سَيِّئَةٍ سَيِّئَةٌ مِثْلِهَا, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and we're going to talk about that again tomorrow. So wait for tomorrow, we'll talk about this a little bit more, but that could happen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the compensation for a sin is another sin like it, meaning here, do another one. You chose this. The brothers of Yusuf alayhi salam, they came to their father and they said Yusuf was eaten by a wolf and they cried and all these things. He said, بَلْ سَوَّلَتْ لَكُمْ أَنفُسُكُمْ أَمْرًا. Your souls dragged you to something. You committed one sin after the other, so it became easier. This lie is just the end of a long list of things you did wrong. That's what he's saying, because that's the way that sins work. You do one, it needs to be covered up with another. It needs to be supplemented with another. The enjoyment is not complete without this other one. They say, you enjoyed this, try this now. And then naturally you're left to that device. So if one sin begets another, and it grows like an avalanche, then how can you stop? If that's the way that it works, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says directly. How does it stop? What's the solution then? Istighfar could work, but you're going to do another sin, then that new sin deserves another. If that's the system, then it cascades eternally to infinity. The answer is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala catches you as you're tumbling and says, stop. Wake up for a second. And mid-tumble, you stop for a second. And you can choose to keep tumbling. That's from His mercy. And He does that for everybody. He does that for everyone. Stops you mid-tumble and says, hey, stop. Get your head on straight. The righteous course of action, what you deserve is to keep going forever because you stepped off the cliff. You slid down and let everything go. You detached the safeties. You chose all of that. Not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the justice is to leave you to go on forever, but from His mercy several times in your life, even within the same sin, He says, stop. Look around. Is this what you want? And then you choose to say yes or no. That is from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Tune in tomorrow, guys. A lot of these questions are going to be answered with what we're going to discuss, the story of the mass murderer that we're going to go over tomorrow. During Ramadan, should someone prioritize objective acts of worship such as dhikr or work on acts that improve iman? They're not mutually exclusive. These things both support one another. It's not either or. They're both the same thing. Dhikr improve your iman, and things, spiritual things and tenets of faith that you look into will also improve your iman. So of course, Ramadan has maybe a little bit more of an emphasis on actual physical actions like dhikr and recitation of the Quran. You want to maximize on those, but there's nothing wrong with balancing and saying, I'm going to listen to one Islamic lecture today about this topic. It also increases my faith. These things are all connected. They're all good deeds. They're all multiplied, and they're all part of Ramadan. Is it true? No, we just answered that. Can sincerity become insincerity, such as when striving to improve Quranic recitation leads to questioning why one hasn't got a teacher yet? I don't understand what this says. No, I still don't understand it. How should I process my grief loss Islamically while knowing my father wasn't Muslim? What's the Islamic stance on offering charity or good deeds on his behalf? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fortify your heart. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala soothe your pain. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you conviction. And I want to tell you something super important. You are a hero. You recognize something that we all take for granted and will take for granted till the moment that we die and afterwards. You recognize the blessing of faith. And you're a hero. I'm not just patronizing you. You're walking the footsteps of the Sahaba. You're walking the footsteps of Ibrahim alayhi salam, who couldn't make istighfar for his father. You're walking the footsteps of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, who said, I will make istighfar for Abu Talib because of everything that he did for me. And Allah said no. And nothing hurt him more, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, but he accepted it. I don't own salvation. إِنَّكَ لَا تَهْدِي مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ. You don't guide those whom you love. Allah's telling this to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And he was at his feet, the feet of Abu Talib, grabbing them because they wouldn't let him by the head. Abu Jahl and Abu Lahab, they pushed him and said, get out of here. So he grabbed his feet and he said, please, ya am, my dear uncle, kalima, say one word, just say the word. أُحَاجُ اللَّهُ بِهَا لَكَ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. I will dispute Allah on your behalf with that word. Just say that word so I can say, oh Allah, he said it, please. And the last words of Abu Talib were absolutely not. I'm upon the deen of Abdul Muttalib. I refuse to say it. The Prophet ﷺ still didn't accept that. He said, I will make istighfar for him. And Allah stopped him and said, don't. You have no right. I know how much it hurts. I don't know how much it hurts. Only you know that. But you have, part of that submission is just like our own messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, just like Ibrahim alayhi salam, who said, لَأَسْتَغْفِرَنَّ لَكَ to his father, I will ask Allah to forgive you. They were both prevented. And they're the two most dear human beings that ever walked this earth to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Guidance and blessing and forgiveness, these are in the hands of Allah. We are property. We're servants. It's going to hurt at times. It's going to be extremely difficult. I can't pretend to understand. But I will make dua that Allah fortifies your heart and continues to show you the blessings that He has shown you and allowing you to come to Islam. And you are a hero that we all take pride in and that we all admire. You are the modern day Sahaba. You are walking these very same footsteps that all of us can only imagine. And the immense reward that's in store for you for that is not something that is accessible to the rest of us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for you. In reference to history of Islam and Prophet stories, if you don't give fatwas and just don't have the knowledge, is that still punishable? Just make sure what you're saying is correct. That's even for the fatwas, right? If you're sure it's correct and you can trace it back and you're pretty sure about it, you can share it, inshallah. Just always have that certainty that you can know, you can trace everything that you're saying, you know exactly where to find it, you understand it correctly, you clear up any misconceptions, and that you stay in your lane. You don't venture outside of what you know, and you should be fine sharing information. Of course, fatwa is a little bit more consequential because people will act based on it, right? They'll directly change their prayer or something based on it, so you have to be more careful. But even with stories of the prophets, you want to be careful and tread carefully, but it's a little bit less stakes than fatwa. So just be sure of what you're saying. What if that effort to please your parents comes at the expense of your happiness, career choice, marriage, etc.? So this is a little bit of a longer discussion that will take us some time to do. So it doesn't, there's levels of obligatory responding to your parents and pleasing them, and there's levels that's recommended. The recommended level is up to you, how far you want to go. If you want to say, I'm going to be absolutely subservient to them, who they want me to marry, the career they want me to have, all of that, I can't pretend to tell you that that's wrong or that there's no reward in that. It's huge. But are you obligated to do all of that? No. It's not an obligation to do all of that. It's an opportunity for immense reward, but are you obligated to marry who they want or to follow the career choice that they want? No. It's not an obligation. Does that mean you shouldn't listen to them? No. But then here's where you have to find a middle ground. Communication, discussion. How can I circumvent the situation? That's what I was saying earlier, where now you have to recalibrate your GPS. So I can't marry this person or choose this career. I can't do that. Okay. I can't tell them, get out of here. Absolutely not either. So what's the middle answer? Let me see, is there another career that they'd be okay with? Is it possible that they could have a middle ground that they'll be pleased with? Is there some kind of communication? That's your job now, and it's a long journey, it's a difficult one, but the reward is immense. The Prophet ﷺ said that the parents is the middle gate of Jannah and the biggest one. It's the easiest one to get into. The easiest opportunity to Jannah, even if I just finished saying that it's going to be tough, he's saying, with that being said, the easiest way into Jannah is through pleasing your parents. This is what the Prophet ﷺ told us. What an epic loser is the one who does, the epic loser has 3 descriptions. Right? The Prophet ﷺ said, what an epic loser that does one of these 3 things. What are they? Said khaba wa khasir. He lost and he's a bum. He's an epic loser. It's like the literal wording. He's a loser and he's a bum. He lost in one situation and he's always going to lose. What did he do, Malik? Yes. So, not honoring the parents, he said specifically, "Man adraka abawayhi wa lam yudkhilahu al-jannah." He experiences his parents in old age and doesn't get through Jannah through this. Like, what's wrong with you? It's such an easy way. So he's what a loser. What's the other two things? That Ramadan exits and he's not forgiven for his sins. Like, what else what were you waiting for? What did you miss? Why couldn't you lock in the easiest season of the year? And the last thing? The one in whose presence I am mentioned and he does not say sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Like, what a loser. Like, what are you losing? What are you losing by saying that? Nothing. Except tons, like no effort that cost you and you're losing tons of rewards. So it's an epic loss. He's saying, I can't fathom that people would lose in these three situations because of how easy they are. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Jazakallah khairan Malik. Are sisters under menses able to read the Quran on their phone or physically with gloves? What counts as a barrier, if so, and why? So, there's a difference of opinion when it comes to sisters reading the Quran on their menses. The majority of scholars said that she should not read it out loud and she can read it mentally. Some scholars have said that it's completely fine. That is the Maliki opinion, as well as the opinion of Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah. From what I know, that the Hanbali opinion, the Shafi'i opinion, and the Hanafi opinion is that she should not read Quran while she is on her menses. So, the Maliki opinion and the opinion of Ibn Taymiyyah are obviously extremely popular nowadays because they're easier for most people. It doesn't necessarily make it, merit to follow. And some scholars have found the in-between by saying if you're somebody who is constantly reading the Quran, is like a Quran student or something, then it would be more okay than not. If it's something that is not a huge difficulty for you to do, to read Quran just silently to yourself, or some scholars also said, this is also another opinion, the Hanbali madhab, which is that you recite it quietly to yourself where the words are not discernible by anyone next to you. So someone next to you could hear that you're reading Quran, like murmuring, but they can't discern any of the words. They said that's fine as well, because that wouldn't be considered proper qira'ah. So while the other opinions are more popular today where people say no, it's completely fine, that's just out of convenience. To be honest, the majority of the scholars throughout history were not supportive of this opinion. So the middle ground, I would say, is that if you're able to get by with it, otherwise it should be fine. Otherwise, if it's extremely difficult for you to go 7 days out of the month without reciting Quran, without connecting with Quran, you're a student, it should be fine, inshallah. I will give both options and you can explore it accordingly, inshallah. If you feel yourself drifting far from the Quran and suffering because of those 7 days a month, then I'll say it is fine to go with the Maliki opinion, inshallah. This is what our teachers have said. It's not something I'm making up. When struggling with prayer, and then, in terms of touching the Quran, yeah, it should be touched with a barrier, or better yet, do something that's not a Quran. A Quran or Mus'haf is defined as something that is, the majority of the words inside of it are the words of Allah. So a Quran with translation in it, a Mus'haf translation side by side, that's not a Mus'haf. You don't need wudu to hold it. The Quran on your phone is not a Mus'haf, and so on and so forth. Yes? Yeah, it's reciting of the Quran in general, but with that, I would tell people it's fine. It's fine to follow the opinion. You're not going to take a break out of Quran. That's what they said, like someone's going to take a break out of the Quran class once a month. It's not really conducive to their journey. Besides the fact, backing that up, they said that these opinions of the majority of scholars are based on the opinions on what? There's no authentic hadith. There's one that's differed over, but there's no authentic hadith about the menstruating woman. The authentic hadith is about the one who's on janaba. So they said that the one that has janaba needs ghusl, sexual impurity, and likewise the woman who's after her menses, so they're like in the situation. But what's the difference between these two situations? Huh? Yeah, the woman doesn't choose to go on her menses. Can't simply get out of it. The one in janaba, just go make ghusl. That's it, you're done at any time. So it's by choice, while this one is not by choice. So that's why even though I don't usually give these options, I gave them here. And I would tell people, if you're a regular student that consistently goes to Sam'a Quran to somebody, or that you would suffer significantly and you're not able to abide by these other opinions, inshallah should be fine and Allah knows best. If the middle opinion works for you, where you're just uttering it quietly to yourself and no discernible letters can be made by those around you, that's a good middle ground, I feel, and the Hanbali method, which I personally follow. Let's do one or two more. Any live questions from living people in front of us? No, okay, I know these are from living people. I mean, like, all right, just checking. Yes, sir.
How should one proceed with improving their Quran recitation if they feel they stutter a lot or make mistakes?
So first of all, the Prophet ﷺ said that the person who the Prophet ﷺ said, the one who reads the Quran, وَهُوَ مَاهِرٌ بِهِ, and he's proficient in it, gets one reward. And the one that reads the Quran, وَهُوَ يُتَعْتَعُ فِيهِ وَهُوَ عَلَيْهِ شَاقٌ, and he stutters in it, and it is something that is difficult for him, فَلَهُ أَجْران, he has double the reward for reading the Quran and for the struggle. So that's number one, which is this situation is the best possibility for you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to give you immense reward for it. Number two is, it's impossible to improve without a teacher, period. You need a physical, live, well, it doesn't have to be physical, live teacher, it could be on Zoom or whatever, a regular, consistent teacher that you meet with and recite Quran with. And they correct your mistakes, and they have to be proficient. So somebody who's going to correct your mistakes and proficiently able to do so, you find that and you regularly attend with consistency, it's only a matter of time before you become a good reciter. Someone, and it doesn't necessarily mean that your voice is very melodious and people love it, but it means you could recite from the Quran from your own effort, anywhere in the Quran, whether you memorized it or not. That's a level that every single Muslim should get to ASAP, where I can open the Mus'haf, read from anywhere without stuttering, without struggling. I know how to do that. If you're not there yet, this is your number one to go to goal after Ramadan. What are you waiting for? You're an adult. Who's going to read the Quran to your kids? How are your kids going to have a relationship with Quran when they never see you open the Mus'haf because you can't? And you're going to tell them this book means the world to us and you got to be connected to it? They're going to say, you're not connected to it, you can't even read it. What are you going to say when they tell you that? They're going to say when they turn 13 or 14, when they're kids, they won't know how to verbalize that. But if they see you and you have no relationship with it, in fact, it's foreign to you, why on earth would they magically have a relationship with it? It's not how it works. When struggling with prayer, is it okay to pray without wudu to build the habit when the act of wudu brings in immense pressure, anxiety, but you really want to pray? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Submission is on Allah's terms, not yours. If you're struggling with wudu, why are you struggling? Get to that answer. Why are you struggling? That needs an answer. It could be different things for different people. So so I don't know what the answer is, but you need to explore that question immediately. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you like a 3-hour window for each prayer minus Fajr. That has a shorter window. But everything else has like 3 hours. Wudu should not take you more than 120 seconds. If you're taking more than 120 seconds in wudu, see a sheikh, speak to him. No, I'm not joking. Or see a counselor. This is not normal and you need to see these two people immediately. The sheikh will tell you, stop it. Religiously, you're doing absolutely wrong. That's the only answer that you need. That you are wasting your time and sinning by trying to perfect your wudu. You're not earning extra hasanat, you're earning sin. There's hadith about this in detail. And the counselor will try to find the psychological reasons why you're doing this because they exist. And then together, hopefully you'll snap out of it. Absolutely unacceptable. You're earning sin. Shaitan is tricking you thinking that you're trying to do it out of care or trying to do it to improve or because you're so cautious about wudu. Pure nonsense. Shaitan is tricking you. You're tricking yourself. You need to make wudu like the generations of Muslims have been making wudu for centuries, which is in 120 seconds, no more than that. And getting salah on time. You said a small action can weigh a lot depending on your sincerity. How to make sure you're sincere and not have any doubts. Didn't we answer this? It's a little bit repetitive. So hopefully you can, if you missed it, you can review the tape. And if there's a different answer that's required, I'll try. What if we rely on social media for business? How should we go about that? Go about with your business. If your social media, if you have a business on social media, does that require you to go to the explore page? Most likely not. You got your business page, you got your sales, you got your insights, you got your messages. Explore and let me scroll my explore page for half an hour. That's a completely different thing than your business. You're getting on for business, you have a business plan. In the next hour, I need to answer messages, I need to process orders, I need to see why no one's liking this page. I need to cry about my follower count that's going down by 2 followers. That's what a business Instagram looks like. It's not scrolling mindlessly and looking for things. How do you navigate getting your family to practice Islam? We're all born Muslim, but none of them practice and something they're completely aware of. Imam Abdullah read today, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu alaykum anfusakum. Oh, people of Iman, and that was actually part of the khatira, but we're running out of time. Upon you is yourself. That's number one. You're not going to be held to account except in proportion to your responsibility and authority over these people. If you have no authority over them, your responsibility is almost zero. Small advice, small encouragement. Hey, I'd love if you guys could pray with me. You don't want to? Back up, try again. Try some other different method. Would you want to come with me in the masjid? Absolutely not. You're a loser, get away from me. All right? Hurtful? Well, okay. Next time, hey, I noticed that you're doing this. It's not good for you. It's haram. Get lost. Mind your business. All right, back up, and just that's your life. The second you say, hey, I told you 15 times, guess who's wrong now? 100% you. The second time it's like, hey, you don't care about the hellfire. What are you, a kafir? You're an idiot. It's a very difficult road. If you're not up for it, stop doing da'wah to your family. Just care about yourself. You're not up for it. You're not cut out. You're not made for it. That's okay. Not everyone is. Do it very carefully, very, very simply. You have no right to get upset except with the proportion of your authority. Are you a father? No, now you have to see what can I do. I'm not taking you to karate class if you don't pray. Now you have some authority. You have some, push-pull. I'm not going to give you allowance, right? You're not going to sleep in this house. No, I'm just kidding. That's a little too far. But you have some kind of authority, some ability to do push-pull. You're a sibling, that's a sideways relationship. You got zero push-pull. Zero. You could say, I'm not going to drive you to the club. I'm not going to aid you in your haram. But what is your ability to push-pull? Zero. You can only encourage and offer and hope that they take it. So you got to recognize the dynamics of the relationship. Just like Uncle Ben said, with great power comes great responsibility. If you have no power, you have no responsibility. So it's super important to, Uncle Ben's not real, I know that. But what I'm trying to tell you is that actually makes a lot of sense. And you should tailor your emotion accordingly. And if you're truly in it for their own guidance, you'll be in for the long haul. Khalid ibn Walid becomes Muslim in the last year of the Prophet ﷺ's life. His brother, what was his brother's name? Al-Walid? Was his brother Al-Walid ibn Walid? His brother becomes Muslim in the very beginning. He's been Muslim for decades. And Khalid becomes Muslim all the way at the end. How does Khalid become Muslim? Through a letter that says what?
I can't believe someone as smart as you is not a Muslim.
You're the man. It's exactly what it says. How can someone like you not become Muslim and your brain is your brain? Like, you're a genius. Islam is, that was the letter. Not like, yo, it's 20 years, you fought against us, you lost, what's your problem? He could have done that, but it was like, I can't believe someone like you, after all this time, is still not interested. Your brain is, look at your brain, look at you. That was the, and he said, as soon as I read that letter, I put it aside, I put my things together, and I headed to Medina. Took 20 years. So you're in it for the long haul if you're sincere. You take all that harshness, you take all that spits in the face, and you keep going because you are in it for their guidance. We'll do one more. Well, let's do it live then. We'll do it live. Go ahead, Yassine.
Are you obligated to point something out? Like, for example, if someone's praying that you don't know, and you see like everything pushing off, do you have to
It's the same answer. Depending on your authority over this person, you may be obligated. If it's just like a random person, you may not be obligated. You should do it. It'll depend on what's at stake here and the setting of But if you should advise in general, whether you're obligated or not, and just do so carefully, depending on what's at stake here. So let's say someone's messing up their prayer and something that's making it invalid. No, you should step in and say, hey, akhi, I saw a little bit more than I should see when you made sujood, and nobody's here for that. Also, your prayer is nullified by that, so just, tuck it in. One time someone did that, and I saw that, and the other guy got violent. Like, he physically tried to attack him. But the other person was a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So it didn't end well for him. But don't let it get to that point. People shouldn't get violent over that, but sometimes they do. You never know. People are nuts. So are you obligated or not? It depends on what's at stake and your authority. But irrespective of obligation, you should step in and try your best to be kind and scale that in accordance to your authority and your responsibility and how you advise this person, especially if they're a random person you've never seen before. So picture that, someone random that you've never seen before coming telling you, hey, this is completely wrong. How would you react? You have no rapport with them, so it's something that may not fly well, so consider that. Sandwich it in a nice package. Start off with the praise. Hey, akhi, I've never seen you here before. It's so great to see you. Ramadan Kareem. Have you been here before? How far do you live? My name is Yassine. Go from there. Yeah, Ahmed.
I'm saying this because I want the best for you would work.
Could work. I don't know. I don't know. It sounds nice. Some people might see it as condescending. Some people might receive it well. I don't know. It's going to depend. Jazakumullah khairan, everyone. We will catch you tomorrow with continuation of beginning of our Ramadan series, Friday.